There's a lot of car companies in the car industry that get together and make a few projects, but aren't really, the same per se, or have the exact same goals for the other car company. That's kind of like Toyota and Subaru, they're both two small Japanese car companies in this big, crazy world, and occasionally they do stuff together. Now, we're pretty used to that concept, and usually, it's fine, like the BZ4X and Subaru Solterra. Am I a fan of EVs? No. Were these EVs particularly bad or great? Not really. And looking back, the Subaru BRZ, Scion FR-S, and Toyota 86, or GT86, or GR86, seriously, Toyota, make up your damn minds, was not really anything controversial. They were kind of fine, they were there, they weren't all that interesting, but, they never really caught on as much as the brands were hoping to, at least not in Subaru's case. Now, here on this channel, since I do a lot of automotive history content, we're pretty used to Toyota's past screw-ups and current screw-ups. Burning down GR Corollas, the oil consumption issues of the late to mid-2010s, the wheel bearings falling off, and the general crappiness of the new Sequoia and Tundra, which, by extension, the 4Runner and Tacoma. We're pretty used to that. But when people think of Toyota automotive blunders, they don't really think of the 86 or FR-S, or for that extension, the BRZ, but not as bad. When you look into the soulful eyes of a Scion FR-S, you don't really think, wow, that car was a huge automotive blunder. And, I really don't either. I just kind of think of it as this weird car that Subaru and Toyota teamed up on just to make this hatchback crossover, I'm using all the wrong terms here, I'm saying everything that it isn't, a sports car thingy, and it was pretty okay, it wasn't based on another car, it wasn't like the other Scion models, which were mainly just the Camry, like the TC, it was its own distinct thing that Toyota and Subaru both worked on, it's its own rear-wheel drive platform. And generally, the partnership was really fair. Toyota handled everything that wasn't the powertrain, they handled the drive type, like definitely our rear-wheel drive, some components for that, drive shaft and stuff, because Subaru's all-wheel drive. They haven't really touched anything since their new crappy Trail Seeker piece of garbage that isn't all-wheel drive, so they didn't really know how to do that, so Toyota helped them out with that, but Subaru sourced most of the powertrain, like the engine and transmission. And also, because this is a Subaru product, it is a boxer engine. Subaru's known for a few things, all-wheel drive and boxer engines. They really love their their boxer engines. So what is a boxer engine? Well, there's a myth out there that's like the firing order is 1, 2, 3, 4, and other such things. That's actually not the truth. A boxer engine is just the arrangement of the pistons, and that's why it's smoother. So in a V engine, the pistons are arranged in a V, they're firing, outwards. In an inline engine, they're all firing up, like an inline 4 or a V6. With the boxer engine, they're firing opposed to each other. So it's horizontal. They're firing in opposite directions. This helps to cancel out the vibrations, like not really engine knock, but all engines make vibrations because there's explosions happening in them, like a lot, because that's what an engine is, and that's how it spins the crankshaft. This just cancels out the vibrations from one piston to another, which makes it generally a smoother engine than regular engines, and these have proven to be pretty reliable. There's not, Subaru's not a brand that you see in the news often for, this Subaru is the worst thing. Aside from the head gaskets, they've pretty much sorted every single issue that they have, even though in some cars, like the Ascent, and God forbid they made a minivan, sometimes they are rather underpowered. Except for the particular Subaru FA20D 2-liter naturally aspirated boxer engine that went into the Scion FR-S, Toyota GR or GT, whatever it's called, something 86, and the Subaru BRZ. These had a small little issue. They had valve spring issues. Valve springs, they're kind of complicated in the way that they work, but just so that you know, they control the valves of an engine, which is pretty important for, inlet and outlet and air and fuel and stuff. These had issues with that. They were prone to failing under pressure or, under high RPMs, which is kind of an issue with the cheap sports car that teenagers are going to floor, and not shift, money shift. So, it wasn't a huge issue, but it was a big issue, especially for this model of car. But generally, things were okay. It was, a pretty easy job, especially for Subaru technicians, because they were used to working with boxer engines. It was really easy for them. It wasn't like taking the engine apart. That's not ever going to be really easy, but for them, it was, pretty okay. Except for one issue that we've left out. The Toyota 86, GT86, GR86, and the Scion FR-S did not go to Subaru technicians. However, they went to Toyota technicians. But fear not. Believe it or not, Toyota has actually made flat 4 engines in the past. Don't worry, it was very modern. It was like in the 1960s with the Toyota Starlet and Corona, So I'm sure, the Toyota technicians with an incredibly high turnover rate still remembered all that, engineering knowledge from the 1970s. Well, the issue was they didn't. They were extremely unfamiliar with these engines, and usually putting the engine back together and taking it apart in the first place was an incredibly difficult job for them, with increased, not fantastic support from Toyota. So Toyota technicians went off of instinct. They pulled the engine, tore it down to the heads, and replaced the valve springs. Believe it or not, that was actually not the issue with this repair. The issue with this repair was putting the engine back together again. The issue is putting the timing chain cover back on. Now, there's a little, subtle design differences that you have to notice between the Toyota 86 and the Subaru BRZ, and especially their engines, like Toyota's style of engines and Subaru's style of engines. Toyota's engines are efficient, don't get me wrong, they're plenty of efficient, but they're not usually, especially with the Boxers, not as efficient or smooth as Subaru's engines. They're more down and dirty, and again, that's not a bad thing, which means that the technicians weren't really used to an engine with such tight tolerances. And you know what RTV is? RTV is like a silicone. It's like a gasket, in a bottle. And believe it or not, officially, that is what they use to seal up the timing chain cover of these cars. But on Toyota, they usually mostly use metal gaskets where you don't really need that much. And this is really where it happened. So on the timing chain cover for these engines, they had no metal gasket. All you had was RTV. So the Toyota techs that are used to Toyota's engines with metal gaskets thought, oh, well, there's no metal gasket on this. There's not anything really stopping it. So I think I'm going to put more RTV to overcompensate. The issue was that the tolerances were so thin that there was nowhere for that RTV to hide. And with the engine aging and revving higher, getting hotter, the bits broke off and then went into the engine. And, little bits of stray stuff, rubbery stuff in your engine isn't really fantastic. And I mean, this was really not good. They acted like little bits of shrapnel in the fuel, like I don't know how to describe this, like a virus, taking out every single organ of your body. They got clogged in the oil pickup screen, starving the pump of oil, and it just, under pressure, fragments would, jam into places where they shouldn't jam, and overall not a fantastic experience with the engines. And the issue was, Toyota really didn't know what was going on. You don't really expect user error from your own technicians when they've been pretty reliable with your engines in the past. So when you have reports of, the new springs, imagine this, you're a Toyota CEO. There's a story of these Toyota GR86s with the Subaru Boxer engine going into the dealerships, getting replaced, getting the free recall, because there was a recall. That's why these were brought to the Toyota places in the first place. Imagine, and then they go out and they're having weird issues with oil and just, each one of them is presenting weird but yet similar symptoms, because some cars react differently to this. It's all about chance. Does it clog the pump first, or does it jam into somewhere it shouldn't be? So they show different results. So if you're the Toyota CEO, where do you trace that back to? Is it a faulty part? I mean, the new springs are tested. They're supposed to be good. How would you nail it down? And that's the same issue Toyota had. And the best part was, Toyota never really ever fixed it. Never. Except for a slight warranty extension in the late 2020s. The issue was, again, it was a hard problem to nail down. So Toyota, and this is kind of angering, they pulled out the classic card, the Uno reverse, and just blamed it on aggressive driving. When that didn't work, they kept revising it, and they found out that it was the RTV. So first they tried to skeet by, they pulled a really GM here, they were just hanging on the wires here, on the ropes, and just saying, whatever. And so they said, you want to know, they rolled out a different protocol. Hey, when you're fixing these, if you are still fixing these, because remember, these are made in 2012 to 2016, because in 2017 they updated the engine. So all Scion FR-S's and Toyota GR86s are, I've already made my point that I hate that name enough. Any cars from that on are fine, and all the Subarus, at least most of them, are fine. It's only really the Scion FR-S and Toyota GR86s or 86s that you have to worry about, because those were touched by Toyota technicians. The Subarus are fine, and everything after 2017 is fine, because they updated the engine and then eventually replaced it with the second generation. And then eventually, they extended the warranty for a couple of these cars, and then did a powertrain recall and some stuff, just to a few cars. So they did fix it a little bit, but I mean, too little and too late. I mean, these cars had already been affected by it. The owners have already given them up. They had already made it into junkyards, And, these cars would have been really cool if they didn't have that issue. And these cars kind of still maintain that radioactiveness from this initial issue. So now we're going to talk about the cars. This isn't going to be a long segment because, they kind of look fine. There's nothing I really have to say about them. They're just nice little, teeny little sports cars. I'd still rather have a Scion TC over either of these because the Scion TC rules, and so does the Camry, and they will forever. But, there's nothing really interesting about them except for that Toyota kind of inherited Scion's design after Scion's demise. But, pretty much. And also, it's safe to say, the Toyota GR86 and Scion FR-S always outsold the Subaru BRZ. So it's really unlikely that you're going to find a Subaru BRZ from the years 2012 to 2016, or for any years, because it sold them like... For every time one Subaru was sold, 6 of these were sold, So it's unlikely that you'll find one. And also, the owners of those never had these issues, so they're still hanging on to them. Meanwhile, these have just flooded the market. Teens get them secondhand. The engine's making some noise. Well, if I put my foot to the floor, the car still goes forward, so it seems right to me. And all those people have had those cars since they were cheap, and most of them bought them brand new like that anyways. There's not a whole lot to say. They look fine. The styling looks fine. It's not gaudy or bad, No really complaints that I have for Toyota on this issue. And also, I'm not trying to, say that Toyota was justified in not doing anything. And I also really get annoyed that they're like, well, it's just aggressive driving. Toyota, you don't know aggressive driving if it hit you in the face, okay? You make Camrys. Give me a break. But, again, it's kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's really hard to find out, considering most of these cars presented with different symptoms. So, I think that Toyota's kind of scumbaggy to pull a GM and say, it's not happening, and if it is happening, we don't care about it. But at the same time, I kind of understand where they were coming from. I know if I was the CEO, and again, it probably wasn't the CEO's job, it was probably someone lower in the company, or multiple people, like an entire team of, product engineers. If I was them, I probably wouldn't be smart enough to figure it out, So who am I here talking shit? Well, they should have done this, when it was pretty hard to discover it in the first place. But all their actions after discovering that it was the RTV, after filing the mandate and all that crap, unexcusable. Toyota, come on. You have a reputation for a reason. How about we try and maintain that? That would be really nice if we could just do that. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. These cars really aren't bad. They have the headlights. This isn't official. They just remind me. Like the headlights of the Prius C and the weird little angular vent fog light things of the 2012 Toyota Camry. Yeah, they're pretty good. The Subaru BRZs, I think, look better in every single year, but, they're less popular. So, With that, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you all real soon.